Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the November 6, 2024 Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee. I'd like to introduce City Attorney Jennifer Vega. Ms. Vega, please explain the role of the public comment.
Sorry. Good morning, Chairman Robinson and council member. During citizen comment, members of the public may address the subcommittee for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits the subcommittee members to listen to the comments, but prohibits members from discussing or acting on the matters presented. Members of the public may speak for up to 2 minutes to comment on agenda items to be discussed. Comments must be related to the agenda item and the action being considered by the subcommittee. The City Council and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending investigations, claims, or litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to introduce our interpreter, Elsie Duarte. Ms. Duarte, who will provide a brief announcement. Welcome. And would you mind providing that announcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is Elsie Duarte. I will be servicing as Spanish interpreter for today's Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee session. I will now take a moment to introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience and review some guidelines. Buenos días. Mi nombre es Elsie Duarte. Bienvenidos a la sesión de la Subcomisión de Seguridad Pública y Justicia. Estaré sirviéndoles hoy como intérprete a nuestra audiencia de habla hispana. Deseamos pedirles antemano, si va a dar un comentario público, por favor hable despacio, con claridad y evite tener distracciones de fondo. Finalmente, pause después de cada una o dos oraciones para poder interpretar lo que esté diciendo de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Elsie. Okay, we'll start this subcommittee meeting with a call to the public. And I do not believe we have one registered speaker, virtual or?
Thank you, Chairman. We have one person in person in the lower chambers, Eric Nielsen, for public comment.
Hi, my name's Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Eric, and I came today to speak about a few things, but specifically the fragility of life. You know, life is pretty fragile, and we only have one life to live. And I noticed that there are some people who get the one life to live, and they live for themselves. But there's other people who decide to be public servants, our fire and police department, but specifically our police department. And as somebody who's lived in the downtown core for years, one thing I noticed is we have beautiful memorials to World War II veterans, but our City of Phoenix memorial to Phoenix employees is kind of bunk, and it also includes the police. Although I think maybe we should consider building a separate one for just the police. I think we could fix the little circular public memorial in the first place, because Phoenix Police Department is lucky enough to actually not have that many fallen officers. So I think what we should do is we should create life-size bronze statues in that circle for every Phoenix police officer who is willing to give their life for the rest of us. We should make it life-size and in proportion to what they really were. So when their family members go and visit it, they can actually see them. The public can actually feel that loss, as this was a person, not just a brick on the wall. And I would also like to point out that we've just been really lucky that we haven't. You know, some cities we need quite a lot more space. And then I was thinking also, when we put the life-size bronze statues of the fallen police officers, I don't see why we couldn't also put a second statue of each police officer, either where they lost their life or just on a random corner downtown, to let the public know that there is somebody standing guard and there is somebody watching. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 1 is approval of the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee minutes from November 6, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve, Chair.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll start with our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for item number 2?
Move to approve item number 2.
Second? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Is there, asking for a second. I apologize. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item number 3 and welcome Fire Executive Assistant Chief Tim Kreis, Deputy Chief Rita Riddle Bigler to the table to provide an update on the Phoenix Fire Department's staffing and response time.
Good morning, Chairman Robinson, members of the subcommittee. Tim Kreis, Executive Assistant Chief. Here with me today is Deputy Chief Rita Riddle Bigler, and thank you for the introduction of our presentation on fire department staffing and response times. I'm going to pass this over to Deputy Chief Bigler to start us off.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Robinson and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your time this morning and opportunity to present updates on our staffing and recruitment in fire. The fire department administers hiring by forecasting attrition rates and managing recruitment, hiring, and training cycles to minimize vacancies. Thanks to the continued prioritization and support of the mayor and council, the number of authorized sworn positions has continued to increase. In only the past year, the authorized positions have increased from 1812 to 1870. This slide is a 9-month snapshot at our authorized positions, as seen in the yellow columns, and our filled positions as seen in the white columns. We continue to work hard to keep the gap narrow and hire and train the bodies that we are approved for. The increase of authorized sworn positions has included significant efforts such as timely hiring and training of sworn firefighters to correspond with new fire stations and new apparatus. In addition, supplemental authorized sworn positions have been approved to enhance emergency transportation services throughout the city of Phoenix to address increased activity levels. The fire department recruits, hires, and trains new firefighters year-round to meet staffing needs. The table shown compares testing and recruits trained in the past 3 years. Testing frequency is determined by both the number of applicants and the full-time positions available, ensuring a strong candidate pool is consistently maintained. As shown in this slide, we only trained 68 recruits in 2022 because of the full-time positions available, in comparison to 2024, where we held 3 recruit classes and trained 154 new firefighters. Even with the reduction in the number of applicants that tested, we are still able to recruit, hire, and train qualified candidates to fill sworn positions. The fire department values diversity as a core principle in our mission to serve the community effectively. We recognize that a workforce reflective of the community we serve enhances trust, understanding, and collaboration. Currently, our organization's demographics align with Maricopa County as well as the National Fire Service, but we also acknowledge areas where further progress can be made. We continue to actively pursue strategies to recruit, retain individuals from diverse backgrounds. Additionally, we analyze demographic data to ensure our efforts align with the evolving characteristics of the community. This enables us to identify gaps and opportunities for better representation of the citizens we serve. As previously mentioned, a founding principle of the fire department's recruitment and hiring efforts is that our membership reflects the diversity of our community. The fire department connects with various communities within the city of Phoenix and beyond through a collaborative approach that includes multiple affinity groups. These efforts consist of partnerships with the community groups such as our local veteran population and the Fire Vet Affinity Group, targeted outreach initiatives such as Shop with a Firefighter with the United Black Firefighters and Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and development programs aimed at our youth, such as Camp Franklin, all-girls public safety camp, hosted by the Valley Women's Firefighter Society. These affinity groups provide invaluable mentoring and support for recruitment for the fire department. Our firefighters are one of our greatest assets in recruitment, serving as ambassadors skipped a page. Our cadet mentorship program has been around since 1975. This program plays a vital role in preparing aspiring firefighters as early as 18 years of age for a successful career in public service. This program serves as a bridge between interested individuals and the rigorous requirements of becoming a firefighter, fostering both personal and professional development. Through hands-on training, mentorship, and volunteer opportunities, cadets gain valuable insight into the skills, responsibilities, and culture of the fire service. The program's success is evident in its contribution to increasing our pool of qualified firefighter candidates, considering on average 10 to 15 cadets are hired each academy class. We remain committed to investing in the cadet mentorship program as a key component of our hiring pipeline. Our firefighters are one of our greatest assets in recruitment, serving as ambassadors who inspire and connect with prospective candidates. Recently, we filled our recruitment officer position with a former professional athlete who has successfully leveraged their extensive network in the sports community to elevate our recruitment efforts. To broaden our reach, we've invested in our first billboard campaign, with more planned in the future, to promote the current open application process. We continue to prioritize traditional recruitment efforts rooted in strong community partnerships. These include collaborations with institutions such as Grand Canyon University, Arizona State University Athletics, WestMech, EVIT career technical programs, and local high school career events. Consistency has proved to be a key element in our recruitment strategy. To support aspiring candidates, we host monthly recruitment information sessions the first Wednesday of every month. These sessions provide a dedicated starting point for individuals interested in pursuing a career as a Phoenix firefighter, offering them the guidance and resources they need to navigate the process. We have also enhanced accessibility by implementing modern tools like QR codes found on our fire trucks, which streamline access to recruit information. Social media plays a pivotal role in our recruitment strategy, allowing us to connect with the next generation of firefighters in a timely and engaging way. Recognizing the importance of staying visible and relevant on digital platforms, we've launched a dedicated Instagram page for recruitment, Join PHX Fire, to directly engage with potential candidates. Through various social media platforms, we've significantly expanded our audience to showcase the fire service and inspire interest in our profession. We also track data and analyze trends to ensure our content remains current, impactful, and aligned with the interests of those we aim to recruit. As seen in this slide, with only 9 posts over 2 weeks on our new Instagram page, we had 580 followers with a total reach of 241,441 over all of our social media platforms. I will now turn this back to Chief Kreis.
Thank you, Chief Bigler. So I'll take up, and just starting off, before we get into the specific response time numbers and those sorts of things, I want to go through a couple things with you all today for discussion purposes, and that is really answering the question of what are the factors that manage and impact response times. And we've presented on this to this group before. And there's some principal factors that are worth refreshing on. And the first one is fire station locations. For us to effectively deliver emergency services to the community within the established response time metrics and standards that we strive to achieve, we've got to be able to have fire stations that are located within our community that can get to our customers in a timely manner. And we watch this very carefully. There's a couple specific areas that we had talked about previously. One of those examples is Fire Station 62, which is now opened, and that closed a pretty significant response time and coverage opportunity for us in Southwest Phoenix. Another major factor in managing response times is emergency service activity levels. And what we're talking about here is once we've got our whole community covered, with the stations located that they can get to the customers when they call 911 within the established response time standards that we strive to achieve, the activity levels play a major portion in it. And an example that I had used previously is Fire Station 7. Station 7 is an extremely busy fire station, and there's one engine company and one rescue there. And they have over 5,000 calls a year that happen in Station 7's first two. As a matter of fact, I was the captain at Station 60 when I was a captain, and Chief Ochoa, who's sitting back there with me today, was the captain at Station 7 at that time. And they would work as hard as they could to cover all their calls. But there's so many calls in that first two area that there were times where other fire companies, my station would come in, Station 33 would come in, Station 27 would come in to cover calls just because they're happening so frequently. You have calls that are occurring at the same time. And that is an important reason and thing for us to focus on as it relates to managing response times, is those high activity levels and the frequency in which fire companies are coming across other areas of the city to cover the first two areas where fire companies are already out of service and on another call. And the last factor I wanted to talk about, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on this one in a second, is major incidents and their impact on response times. And I have another slide to kind of take us through that. So when we're looking at major incidents, there's a variety of different examples, and for the purposes of this slide, I've got 4. So structure fires are major incidents for us. Depending on the situation, you could have a 3-in-1 assignment to manage a house fire, all the way up to a first or a second alarm for more significant fires, apartment fires, commercial fires, outside combustible storage fires, etc. Another type of incident that requires a lot of resources for us, major incident, is major medical calls. In some instances, extrication is required, multiple ambulances, multiple critical patients to treat. Hazmat incidents are another major incidents for us, and there's a ton of different variety associated with hazmat incidents, and then also technical rescue sorts of incidents, and specifically mountain rescues, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. So mountain rescues are frequently complex incidents that necessitate the response of multiple units. Camelback Mountain, as an example, we can divide into a bunch of different segments. For patients below the rails at Camelback Mountain on the Echo Canyon side, we can typically initiate treatment and carry folks off the mountain, load them into an ambulance, and take them to the hospital. For incidents in the rail system, treatment needs to be administered to patients, and rope systems have to be created, and patients safely lowered to a position where they can then be carried off the mountain. For incidents above the rail system, near the top of the second rails, top of the mountain, extraction via helicopter is often required. In nearly all cases, fire companies can hike to patients and initiate care before the helicopter can take off from Deer Valley Airport and make it to the mountain. The first company that's going to arrive on scene to a critical and technical mountain rescue is going to hike. They're going to carry equipment to initiate care to the patient as quickly as they can. The next unit or two is going to follow them, carrying equipment to extract the patient, extra water, and other supplies. In instances where helicopter extraction is necessary, firefighters are needed to manage the landing zone, which includes closing the trail and keeping other hikers away from helicopter operations. Once the helicopter extracts a patient, it then flies off the mountain to a landing area where another fire company has prepared a landing zone, and an ambulance is standing by ready to transport the patient to the emergency room. At this point, we're at 5 units. In addition to the units working for public and firefighter safety, reasons we have to have a tactical reserve of units, and for this example, 2 additional TRT companies and an additional rescue when conditions warrant, especially in hot temperatures, and I gotta make that point because that's really important there. And now we're at 7 or 8 units, not including command officers to manage the incident, specialists who are focused on safety, and the crew chief in the helicopter. It's not uncommon for these units to be committed to an incident like this for 2 or 3 hours. And the good news is for the patient, care is initiated as quickly as we can get to them, and things get better for patient outcomes, which with each step in the process ending at the emergency room. For the firefighters on the mountain, they got to gather their equipment, hike down the mountain, and then rehab. All this takes time and has a cascading impact on response times. These units are staffed with firefighters who work in local fire stations around the incident. When they're on scene of the incident, they're not available to run other calls that are always happening in their response areas. We do redeploy units from stations where 2 units are assigned. These are called adaptive response stations or adaptive response units, and these help to cover gaps in our service delivery model, but it leaves other gaps at the stations they vacated because activity levels are so high throughout the city. So
We have a question. Councilman Waring?
So we talked about this last time, Chief. As I read this chart, District 2 has the worst critical incident response times, the worst first arriving engine to a fire. Curiously, we're kind of more in the middle on first arriving ladder to a fire incident, and ambulance response times by far the worst. Total incident call volume by far the least. So residents of District 2 are using these services by far the least. The next closest would be District 6, and we're only about 75%, 74.5% of what they're using. District 8 is using 2.5 times the number of calls. Now remember, we just did redistricting, So the population should be within a couple thousand people. These aren't vastly different things. So the exact same number of people in District 8 are using your services 2.5 times as much, 14,163 versus 35,618 calls for service. District 4 is using twice as many. And that makes up a disproportionate share of the city. So emergency service activity levels, District 2 is last. Are we having a lot of major incidents, mountain rescues, or anything like that outside the norm? Like, I'm trying to figure out what accounts for the horrendous response time difference that the other districts, the district that is using 2.5 times the number of services, has a much better response time. Something's haywire somewhere. Taxpayers in District 2 have the highest annual salary, slightly ahead of Kevin's District 6. I think last time I checked, it was $106,000 to $102,000. So taxpayers in District 2 are paying a disproportionate amount to pay all your salaries, to pay for these fire stations, and they're getting worse service by far. It's not really even close. And less of it, dramatically less of it. Any thoughts on what I'm supposed to tell them? I live there too, by the way, so it affects me. Like, I mean, are we having a lot of mountain rescues so people are off doing other things and that accounts for it? Because this is dramatic and it seems like it's getting worse based on my memory of what the chart said last time.
Well, Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, and members of the subcommittee, the priority of the Phoenix Fire Department is to provide great service to everyone. And specific to questions on major incident activity levels associated with District 2, I would have to look into that to be able to provide you
Okay, please do. Sorry to interrupt, Kevin, I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, sorry. If this was a product and people were just going to a store, I think I want the product. Do I want to pay more for the product that's going to get here a lot later? Or do I want the when it's a life-saving emergency, or do I want the product that's going to get there faster? So no, the citizens are not being treated the same, including me. Not even close. I mean, that's not even close. I just highlighted, So other people in the city are getting to use, other districts in the city are getting to use much more of the service, and they're getting a way faster response, which is really the thing that matters in this game. So that's not sustainable. What are we going to do to change it? And I kind of need an answer now. I don't think that's unfair. Maybe you can tell me where the next 4 fire stations are planned. Like the next 4 that are going to come online. Where are they? Are any of them in District 2? And how many of them? Because it's not just a one-station problem, clearly.
Well, I can answer a lot of your questions right now. Many of them I won't be able to give you a detailed answer, but I do have some good news for you and the residents in District 2, and I'm kind of getting out of order of how I was going to present this, but as it relates specifically to ambulances, the council approved a program that we brought to them where we wanted to convert some of our existing peak time ambulances to full-time ambulances, and the first 2 that was done on are Rescue 45 and Rescue 49. So those are now full-time ambulances that went in service in the end of September, both of which are in District 2. So that will have an impact and an improvement. And there's some other things that I can discuss as it relates to the next fire stations that we're constructing. Certainly 62 is staffed and open. 74, we had a groundbreaking and it's under construction. And the bond stations, for which everyone I believe is aware of, stations 15, Station 7, Station 13, and Station 51 are the next stations that we'll be building through the bond process. That's the answer.
And maybe you could just run through how many of those are in District 2, and surely you guys must have worked out in this age of computers how much all these stations and all this activity and all these taxpayer dollars are going to cut off some of these numbers.
None of those stations are in District 2.
So how many stations was that you just mentioned? Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair.
6.
So 6. So by far, the only thing I conclude from what you said before was the thing that's mattering in District 2 is fire station location. We're building 6 more stations None of them are District 2, but by District 2, it's not even close to the same level of service. The thinking there is what exactly?
Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, using Fire Station 56 as an example. Fire Station 56 is located on Carefree Highway east of I-17 and serves the residents of District 2. Fire Station 56 is the first new station as it stands right now to TSMC in that surrounding area. As that area gets built out, we need a fire station located there, and that will prevent Fire Station 56 from responding into that area as quickly as they do. And the reason that I bring up that point is because the network of fire stations is about delivering the best service we can to the community. And every time a new fire station gets built and coverage increases, it benefits really the entire system.
Okay, if you put a station in Ahwatukee, that, I guess if somebody from District 2 is visiting Ahwatukee, then yes, it might, by happenstance, benefit them. But can you see why a resident of District 2 like me might hear what you're saying, but say, wow, we're putting a lot of infrastructure places where they already have much lower response times. I'm paying taxes too, I don't understand. And of course, I'm the guy who's most likely to run into these people, and they might ask me. I haven't really heard a good answer to what I'm supposed to tell them. So I get what you're saying about the one out by TSMC. That's in the far, keep in mind, the district goes to the Paradise Valley border, south of Shea, at 64th Street. That station doesn't do anything for the vast majority of the district. I get that maybe there's a ripple effect. Appreciate the 2 ambulances. That's, of course, not the only problem necessarily. I don't have a breakout of how many critical incident responses. You know, the ambulance, maybe you'd also send it to a fire, but you've got a whole delineated thing, an engine to a fire. I don't think the ambulances can put out a fire. They could help people who are hurt in the fire, including firefighters, but they're not going to put out the fire. I assume the ambulance responses are in the critical incident category, where District 2 is still the worst by far. So do we know how much time is going to be shaved off the 8 minutes and 19 seconds response time with these 2 new ambulances?
Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, members of the subcommittee, I'm not going to speculate on how much. We'll keep a close eye on that. But what I can tell you is when delivering emergency services, the network of services all get healthier when improvements are made. So to your point, when ambulance coverage is better in Station 49's first due, for example, the customer gets an ambulance quicker and Engine 49 gets back into service quicker to run the next call. So all these things are interconnected.
Is the response time in District 2 getting better since 2 years ago?
Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, I don't have those numbers memorized by heart, but I can get those answers.
So I'm going to speculate that it's probably worse. I guess I'll just say we've known about response times for probably decades, but here we are, where one district's getting it just completely out of whack. It's not even close. So can you understand why a resident of District 2, like me, might be a little skeptical at this point that what you're saying is actually accurate? It hasn't helped them all these years. I don't know how many years fire stations have been measuring response times, but I gotta believe pre-computer, decades. I'm sure that was a thing. I'm sure when fire stations were first invented, wherever, they probably were like, we got a lot of people here, we're, try to. So all these decades, 2024, District 2, it just seems like we're not getting treated fairly. And I haven't heard anything that makes me think, other than the 2 ambulances, that something substantive is really gonna change and putting these stations other places. I couldn't tell a homeowners association that. They'd laugh at me. I hope you guys can see why. I'm not trying to be mean, I just, like, if a District 2 resident watching right now, I'd be like, I don't see this is gonna change. So I guess I'm asking a little bit of why not. I did ask kind of similar questions, brought up these same issues. Some of what I'm saying now probably should have been anticipated, but so for next time, I might get a transcript of my questions for this time, and I would hope that there would be answers, so at least I can tell people why. It's not gonna make them happy, doesn't make me happy. I definitely think there is gonna be a component of why do I pay taxes when so much of the services, not just in this area, are going somewhere else? And, you know, a helpful answer would be fantastic. So again, I'm sure I sound like a jerk, but this is a life and death thing, as I often hear from firefighters, frankly, from firefighters who live in District 2. Just like me, they live there too, so it just sounds like most of the infrastructure that's online and coming up is not going to change this at all. But I'd be hard pressed to think about how a District 2 taxpayer isn't paying quite a bit for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Price, I have one real quick question that I think might help to clarify a few things. Can you briefly tell us what factors go into determining where a fire station will be placed within the city of Phoenix?
Chairman Robinson, members of the subcommittee, the factors that go into placement of fire station is travel time and population density and planning for what is going to be growing in that particular community, in that particular area. Another important factor is activity levels, as we've discussed previously. It's really a total community look and approach to forecast for the future of what we're going to need as a city and be able to meet that need. So it's all of those factors and more.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, then I would like a follow-up then. So really, I guess what we're saying is the 14,163 people in District 2 had on average, much slower response time, whether it was a fire or an ambulance. I think that's a true fact-based statement. You correct me if I'm wrong. They're just going to have a worse outcome. It's not as dense, so the travel times are going to be more. I guess they're just out of luck, because we're going to put it where 35,618, I don't have my glasses on, but I think that's correct, in District 8 are going to use the services a lot. Now, I have to question how roughly 200,000 people can be so much sicker in District 8 or District 4 than they are in District 2. It just seems like maybe through education, like when to call an ambulance, something like that might be in order, because it just seems like that's unlikely that there could be such a dramatic difference. And you're calling an ambulance, it should be something serious, I would think. You're calling a fire department, I hope there's a fire, or at least you think there is. It's not somebody just having a barbecue. You're definitely pretty sure roof's on fire or something. I mean, 2.5 times. That just seems unlikely to me. So maybe before we build more fire stations in some of these other areas, thereby effectively, health-wise, sort of almost disenfranchising the people in District 2, we might want to consider some other things besides just what was just discussed. Because doing it that way, I guess District 2 will always be out of luck. That's not fair. That's not justice. That's not anything except irritating to me. To the extent anybody cares about that. It's hard to keep just pouring money into these other areas and not see any kind of improvement in my own. So I would appreciate you crunch down these numbers, and you heard some of my questions. I'll repeat them at the next meeting. What are we going to do to change this? I am a little surprised we don't know how much putting 2 ambulances up there is going to shave off, because that definitely matters. I believe the ambulances calls are much more prevalent than the fires. There are just more of them, so that could matter. I gotta believe there's a projection somewhere. You wouldn't be doing it of like how much. You wouldn't send the ambulances there if you didn't think they'd make some kind of difference. So that's something I'd specifically like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I am in a district that neighbors Councilman Waring, and so I also would like you to talk about how the land up there plays a role in how we are able to respond or not respond as quickly.
Thank you, Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman O'Brien. If I understand your question right, what we're talking about is maybe population density and how spread out a population can be around a fire station. It definitely has an impact. If neighborhoods are built in areas that are outside of the 4-minute response and travel time of existing fire stations, those areas are going to be outside of that zone. So folks within that zone, when those units are in service, can expect to get pretty good service. I can tell you, I live in District 1, and when my parents moved up there, up on Happy Valley Road, the nearest fire station was a long ways away. And when the city got built out and when we were able to do it, Fire Station 48 was put in, and that solved that. But for the decades before Fire Station 48 was built, we were outside of that, the 4-minute travel time of a fire station, that other areas of the city that have been more established experience.
So I know that I have residents in the northern part of my district who are quite a distance from fire station, and part of that is because there's a lot of state land up there that has not been developed. And so as we look at developing, I know that I, as a councilwoman, also will be looking more closely at what kind of fire stations we have and where we are so that we understand what that response time can be. Additionally to Councilman Waring's line of questioning on the call volume. I certainly was not a firefighter, but I was the daughter of a firefighter, or I am the daughter of a retired firefighter, and recall many dinner time conversations about calls. I think it would be important for us to have a breakdown of incident call volume, what type of calls those are. It is staggering to see more than a two-time difference between District 1 and District 8 and District 7 and some of those incidents. But understanding the type of calls we're going on and how we're meeting those needs, I think that all of our residents in the city of Phoenix deserve to have a quick response time and know that their city services will be there. And probably it would be helpful if we could, maybe in a briefing, talk more about when we answer calls, that impact, like you were talking about, when a mountain rescue takes all of those resources from stations, what that effect is out into the other parts of the city. A rescue call in South Mountain, although it may not seem like it, absolutely can affect District 1 and District 2 because of that domino effect. So I would appreciate if we could have, I don't know if folks want individual briefings or if we want to have a better idea of, in a presentation from you all, what that looks like. I know that I'm a very visual, like to see it. It's great that you said the words, but having a map and a graph showing how many resources are coming away and maybe in a specific example, what those call volumes do, what happens to them at other stations and those response times. I know we've made some great strides in getting positions open and a new station open, another one coming on the way, and then some modifications. Some of those stations you mentioned are not new stations. The GEO bond is right, building new facilities so we can house more folks there, which would increase response times, correct?
That's correct.
And why will it increase response times to all of the city? How will it help? Because I believe that having a better, bigger station, 7, right? Is that our busiest station in the entire city? So tell me why making that a bigger station, having more resources there, helps my constituents.
Absolutely. Chairman Robinson, Councilman O'Brien, Station 7 is a fantastic example. Station 7 is a two-bay station with one engine and one rescue in it currently. Station 7's activity levels are extreme. Station 7 needs another resource in there, another all hazards resource in there. And with, if you rebuild the fire station big enough to put another unit in there, then those calls that occur in that response area are now divided by 2. And because of that, the stations around Station 7 will be responding into Station 7's first due when they're out on another call much less frequently. And that will have a big difference. So specifically, when Station 60, where I used to work, would respond into Station 7's first due, our response times would often be 9 or 10 minutes because we're coming across from a whole different area. Another example is Station 15. Station 15 is an extremely high activity level area. We need to build a new station so we can get another engine and another ambulance in there. And I want to go back to the plan for Station 7 is 2 all hazards companies and 2 ambulances. So we'd be adding an all hazards company and an ambulance. Station 15 is another good example, exactly like Station 7 from that perspective. Adding those resources in that area will reduce calls for service in all the areas around coming into Station 15's area. In addition, Station 15 will have an adaptive response truck. Adaptive response trucks are critical for major incidents when we have, like as we described earlier, and you said it very well, you have a fire up in any area of the city of Phoenix, we'll call it District 1. The stations that are around that fire, 3 engines and a ladder, typically for a house fire and a rescue and some other support stuff, are going to be working to put that fire out and search the house and rescue and treat folks and all those wonderful things that they do. But the adaptive response trucks are key and critical for us because we use those to redeploy to areas where you have companies out of service to run those calls. So for everyone in the city of Phoenix, the increased capacity has a cascading impact positively on service and response times.
And then how does automatic aid play into our response times? And maybe you could explain automatic aid for those who don't understand it.
Certainly. Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the subcommittee, the automatic aid agreement has been the gold standard of intergovernmental cooperation, in my personal opinion, for anything I've ever seen in government. Essentially what it is an agreement that every municipality, I believe there's nearly 24 fire departments within Maricopa County, all sign on automatic aid so our customers get the service from the closest, most appropriate unit, regardless of jurisdictional boundaries. So what that means is I live in District 1, as I discussed before. If Station 48 is on a fire and someone in my family calls 911, the Peoria station down the street is going to be the closest, most appropriate unit, and they're going to come to help my family. And everyone in our system experiences that. If somebody called 911 from these council chambers today, and there happened to be a Mesa truck driving by, going to training, whatever they might be doing, they could respond and walk into the council chambers to provide treatment. The glue that holds the automatic aid system together is doing the right thing for our customers. And we have tremendous system-wide for everyone that participates and all the residents who live, regardless of cities, tremendously more efficient model for service delivery because of it. The other thing that's very important for the automatic aid system, and Chief Gonzalez is going to talk about it in a minute, is we have to train the same. So we have Phoenix Regional Training Academies that make sure that our firefighters are training the same. We train our special operations folks the same. And we actually, part of the agreement is compliance with NFPA standards as well as joint Phoenix Regional Standard Operating Procedures. And what that means is we all utilize the same procedures for house fires or command procedures or technical rescue calls or major medical. You go through the gamut. But it is a fantastic and extremely efficient system. And it's a gold standard for fire and emergency services cooperation anywhere in the world.
Thank you. I would too like to, because it is concerning about how much of an outlier District 2 is on their ambulance. And I believe our ambulance, I look forward to that correcting with those 2 ambulances. If it does not correct as much as we think it should. I would hope that next time we see this presentation that we'll have some proposed solutions on bringing them closer into the rest of the times on the chart. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I won't go into the same level of detail I was going to go into describing these metrics, but for critical EMS incidents, the gold standard, the standard for us is established by the NFPA. It's 5 minutes, 90% of the time. First arriving engine to a fire is 5 minutes and 20 seconds. First arriving ladder to a fire is 9 minutes and 20 seconds. And our critical ambulance service delivery response times are not established by the NFPA, they're established by AZDHS, and that's a 10-minute 90th percentile response for ambulances. When you look at the citywide totals, we are above what the standard is, and the Phoenix Fire Department is totally committed to doing everything we can within our power to bring those response times down and within the standard. We've had good success with a lot of initiatives. We talked about some of them today, but there's a lot of work still yet to do. I do want to mention one thing associated with the chart that you're looking at, is this is through January, the beginning of this year, through October 31st. So that's what these numbers are. So the numbers will be higher as it relates to total incident call volume when we get to the end of the year, of course. There have been some improvements. We talked about the rescue conversion plan and converting those two ambulances at 49 and 45 from just part-time to full-time ambulances. That is going to be a good step forward for us. In addition to that, the operations chiefs have expanded our partnership with the Daisy Mountain Fire Department, as we talked about, Councilwoman O'Brien, automatic aid and relationships and doing the right thing for our communities, working together. In the event that a resident in North Phoenix had a delayed ambulance response time, Daisy Mountain now can help us and provide service and do that. We've had a little bit of that relationship with them for many years, and it's been very positive. So we're excited about what that'll do to enhance service delivery capacity. We talked about Station 62 opening with the engine and the rescue in Southwest Phoenix. Station 74, we talked about the bond stations. And the last thing that I'm going to discuss is really some of the highlights from our community risk reduction efforts. This has been a significant priority and strategic initiative for the fire chief, and it's a very, very smart one because it has an impact. So a couple of highlights. A little while back, we presented on fireworks and fireworks-related fires on the 4th of July in 2023. We were very happy to see that when compared to 2024, the decrease in fire activity on the 4th of July was 37.5%. So significant impact there. Our heat relief efforts, I think everybody's very familiar with that particular program over the summer, the joint program that was done under leadership and direction of this council and the city manager's office. That resulted in about a 20% reduction in heat-related 911 calls for our community. The OCS program that you all approved to do more inspection works at outside combustible storage sites has resulted in a decrease in those fires, especially the long-term serious campaign fires that we were experiencing. We're very proud of that program. And the last one that I'll highlight that we recently did an assessment on was the trail restrictions program. When you compare mountain rescues during the summer at Camelback Mountain and Piastawa Peak, they're down significantly than where they were in the same summers that before that trail rescue program was in place. So there's a lot of things going on to make a difference here. We have a lot of work left to do, and that really, actually I do have one more slide, excuse me. So I'll go to the next slide. And this is just a snapshot of where we're at with our ambulance transportation rates. So in your council packets, you had the graph and some detail there. I'm presenting this information in a little different way because I think it's just easier to sort of assess and see. And that's average monthly transport. So in 2022, we're about 7,000 transports per month system-wide for the Phoenix Fire Department. In 2023, that number increased to nearly 8,000. And in 2024, we're seeing ambulance activity levels still continue to increase. And the monthly average right now is about 8,400 transports for our rescue ambulance emergency transportation service model. And that concludes my presentation. I appreciate all the feedback and direction I've received from you all today, and I'm happy to answer any more questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Councilwoman O'Brien has a question.
I have a clarification on the mountain rescue and the summer program. Did we add, or did South Mountain get added to the list of parks for summer heat restrictions?
Councilman Robinson, Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman O'Brien, yes, that is correct. The Parks Board did approve adding South Mountain to the trail restrictions program.
And was that just recently effective?
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman O'Brien, yes, that was in the October board meeting, as I recall.
Okay, so we'll be able to tell next year, after next summer, the differences that having an additional mountain could make in your incident calls.
That's right.
In mountain rescues. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Waring?
Between 2022 and 2024, Mr. Chair, we had an over 17% increase in monthly, average patient transports. That's enormous. Population is going up. It's not going up like that. Why? I mean, at some level, do we not track? Why are these people calling in such larger numbers over a 2-year period? Like, what happened? Is there some way to educate people about when it's appropriate to call an ambulance and when it's appropriate to drive yourself? I mean, do we do any of that? Because I was struck on this previous slide, basically we're treating all calls for service. It's all lumped together. What's a heart attack and who has a cold? I mean, there's no way that there's an extra 20,000 heart attacks out of 200,000 people in District 8 compared to District 2. That just would defy credulity, I believe. Maybe somebody will prove me wrong. Could you guys go out and get some sort of grant? We vote on these every meeting, it seems like, at our regular meetings, with ASU to study this. I mean, is it an increase in drug use? I mean, what could account for that? Are people dramatically sicker now than they were in 2022? Just as a layman, that seems impossible to believe. So 2022, you could argue maybe we were still at the tail end of COVID, so more people are sick now than then. I'd be curious to see the 2020 numbers. I'm sure it's probably greatly elevated. We were told that was the biggest calamity that's ever happened, or certainly in our lifetime, maybe the flu in the late 19-teens. Like, is nobody looking at this? This isn't interesting for anybody to study. There's no sociologist or whatever they would call it at ASU. Have we asked? Do you guys have some interns or some of these younger fire people? Can they sit down and crunch the numbers? It just seems, we're not asking for people's personal health data. Like, why has this been this dramatic increase in calls? Maybe there's something, some of us could do something about it. Instead of just continually building fire stations that aren't in District 2 to account for this dramatic rise. Because I also suspect we're going to find the dramatic rise is not happening in District 2. We don't have enough calls for service to account for it. Even if there was a rise, it's not going to be enough to put a dent in it the way this lays out. I was struck by this. We did hire an ASU. I think he's actually on staff, but he's also a professor. I'm spacing on his name. We had him do a study of the heat-related deaths. We kind of glossed over the fact that I believe, this is from memory, so if I got it wrong, I'm sorry, but it's in this ballpark, like 89% somehow involved, I think it was heroin and fentanyl. Well, maybe the problem is the drug use and not as much the heat. Maybe we should be addressing that, hire more police officers to fight the drug trade or something. Sometimes I think we're addressing the wrong things. But I'm not the person to know. I don't think either one of my colleagues here, I don't want to speak for them, is the person to sit down with a pen and paper and try to figure that out. But you got 190,000 transports, and I'm curious, like, is it just going to go up in perpetuity? We're never going to ask these questions, and we're just going to put stations where this unexplained increase is happening? It sounds like that's what we're planning. I do think at some point, the statistics on a lot of stuff, I'm not speaking, particularly since she's right here, but for District 1 or District 3. But if you look at statistics on a whole host of things like this, during COVID, for example, it is like District 1s, 2, and 3 are a completely different city that has no relation to anything south and northern, if you just looked at numbers. I mean, at some point, I think we've seen the last 10 years or so, a large swath of the population was feeling a little left out, and now it's kind of going a different direction than maybe where we were all rowing the boat somewhat in the same direction before. How long do you think it's going to be, city leadership, this isn't directed at the people sitting in front of me, but in general, before there's a, why are we all together? Maybe we should be a suburb or something. Why wouldn't that be a thing when you look at stuff like this? It's just food for thought, but it is going to come to people's attention eventually the more dramatic this difference gets. I can't be the only one that's noticed. So thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. I am actually expecting some sort of response about either why we can't find out what's causing this or what we're doing to find out. And I did mention this, everything I mentioned today basically was mentioned at a previous meeting. And it sounds like pretty much none of it got addressed. So now I'm asking for sure directly. Lori, thanks.
Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, specific to emergency transportation services or ambulance transports, part of the reason that those numbers have went up was a recent change in state law that impacts how our firefighters engage with the community. It has always been the Phoenix Fire Department's position and policy and standard to treat everybody with exceptional service, and folks who want to go to the hospital. But a recent change in state law in how we engage in those discussions with folks has resulted in an increase in emergency transportation services, and that's part of it. I can tell you, I was the operations chief during COVID, and we were totally prepared for a massive increase in calls for service, while at the same time a reduction in our capacity to deliver service during the pandemic. We were watching what was happening in New York City, specific to the Fire Department of New York, very closely, and forecasting and doing models to see if we would have that same impact here. Fortunately, the firefighters stepped up in an incredible way, and we did not have those specific impacts. But we are fully committed to assessing everything we can to reduce emergency service activity levels through community risk reduction activities, some of which I discussed today, and providing the best service we possibly can and response times to our community.
So, Mr. Chair, so if I'm understanding right, nobody's claiming people are sicker than they were before. State law, we're actually telling people you have to take a emergency ride, presumably to a hospital, I guess. Whereas before, they were saying, no, I don't want to go. I mean, that's the only way I could interpret that. What did the state law say specifically that makes that so? Did our lobbying team explain the implications of this to state legislators? I've been a state legislator, so I could speculate that might be 50-50 at best, where it was an understandable, this is the consequence of what you're doing. I've been on the receiving end of those briefings. Maybe they understood what was being said, maybe not. Maybe it was clear what the implications were, maybe not. So am I reading this right, that now we're making people go to the hospital who weren't going before? Like, sure. I don't understand how otherwise, what else would it be?
Chairman Robinson, Councilman Waring, the policy of the Phoenix Fire Department and also aligned with state law is, of course, when patients need to go to the hospital, we take them. And I've been a fire captain, I've been a firefighter, and a lot of the patients that we transport to the hospital, there's no question they absolutely have to go. It's the right thing to do. Some of them are unconscious and maybe hanging on to the edge of staying alive. In other cases, folks can make a decision if they're alert and oriented ×4 and they meet the protocols aligned with state law and our medical directions and on our SOPs, they can choose whether or not they want to go to the hospital. But the policy of the Phoenix Fire Department and the state law is if folks want to go to the hospital in an ambulance, we're going to take them.
So, Mr. Chair, That's confusing to me. You said there was a change in state law
Yeah.
that accounts for this increase. What was the change?
The change in state law was associated with memorializing that if folks want to go to the hospital, fire EMTs and transport services have to take them. And the other thing that was in there was that you were not, and it's not a thing that folks do anyways, but you're not allowed to provide any sort of diagnosis to patients.
Chair, if I might, if I could, Councilman Waring, I had a friend whose husband had an episode in the middle of the night, and they called 911. He didn't think he needed, once they got there was some discussion about whether or not he needed to go to the hospital. Ultimately, they decided to go. I think often you have patients who ask, should I go or not? If I could, in my layman's terms, say, if I ask the fire department when I've called them to my house, should I go or should I not go? They have to say, do you want to go or don't you want to go? They may not advise a patient on whether or not they should go. So then if I think I feel bad enough and I say, yep, I want to go, they're going to take me even if they think I have a cold.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So the change in policy at the state level, change in law at the state level, was you have to ask, do you want to go or not go? I'm trying to interpret what Ann just told me. And before that wasn't the case, so fewer people were going. Is that it?
It appears to have had an impact, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I can tell you one person who had a chance to ride in one of your ambulances that I know very well. That was me, 3-4 years ago. Turns out I didn't need to go, but I had a doctor saying I did. And one thing he wasn't going to let me do was drive away. So I was a healthy transport that didn't need to go. It cost me some money. What are you going to do?
Well,
I got the guy standing there. He's basically begging. He's like, oh, please. And, just sometimes,
well,
people miss it. I appreciated that he cared. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to laugh. And it was kind of funny. Your guys showed up and a whole room full of people saw them say, oh, hi, Jim. So what are you going to do, right? But then we got to the hospital and they're like, no, you're totally fine. But so I've had that experience. I guess it was up to me if I wanted to walk home, but I didn't know that was a recent change. I still want to know what's the difference between all these calls and these other districts. I just want to make sure that's just clear, because again, I feel like I brought this up before and it didn't seem to land. And what can we do about it within the confines of state law? And if we think a state law, whatever its genesis, we've had issues with state law before, is producing lots of people going to the hospital who don't actually need to go, we should probably tell legislators that. That's probably not what they intended. If it's saving some people, yes, by all means. If you're having a health issue, absolutely call. But it just seems so unlikely, and I just doesn't seem like we've done a lot, and it is affecting our policies, this dramatic difference in usage by almost identical numbers of people. There's got to be more going on there than diet and exercise. That can't be it. It's got to be something else. I'd like to know what that something is so that we could then reduce some of these numbers safely. I want to be clear about that, safely. Everybody gets transported who should be transported, and send some of the services to the 14,163 people who are calling, who were kind of hoping for the 5-minute response, but are actually getting 8 minutes and 19 seconds. And I've had our firefighters, including some who live in District 2, tell me, well, that's going to get some people killed. So just FYI, that will get my attention. I have to respond to that, and I am right now. So, I mean, it's just so dramatic, it kind of is beyond belief. I'm sorry I belabored it, but I hope these were interesting questions for you, Kevin.
They were.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you. I had one real quick question, Chief Bigler, it's for you. On slide number 3, if we can go back to slide number 3 real quick, and it may be a bit of an anecdotal type of question. Are you able to? well, either way, it's on the testing and training. In 2024, we have had so far 600 applicants who have actually been tested. And you go back 2 years, we had 921. So they're losing about 300 people a year, it seems like. Do we know why that's happening? And the reason I ask the question, my experience has always shown the fire service being a lot more popular than anything else almost in the city. We always had groves of people applying for positions there. What are we seeing? Or is there any explanation that can be offered up?
Chairman Robinson and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the question. So that's something that we have been trending as well as we continually watch our numbers go down. We currently have an application process open right now. And we have, as of today, we have 769 people that have signed up to take our test. But the number that you are looking at is the people that actually show up for the written test. All fire departments are hiring at a very rapid rate around the city. And so lots of the candidates have a lot of options of where they want to work, what city, how busy they want to be. So they've just got, the candidate has a lot of the options nowadays of where they want to work.
Okay, thank you. And as I look at it, it looks like about 1 in 4 people who actually take the test are possibly hired by the Phoenix Fire Department. If you go back a couple of years, it was 1 in 10. So I like the odds here better than probably at some other places. So, okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Sure. Councilman Waring.
You're sick of me, but if you'll indulge me one more time. If I remember from the chart you showed at the last one, I think in 2014, you had like 2,100 applicants. That's been the most, in all of these things, that's almost been the most worrisome thing. To Kevin's point, people generally have positive feelings, at least I thought. Kids grew up wanting to be firefighters. Kids in my neighborhood grew up wanting to be firefighters. I just, that plummet by more than 2/3, and it'll be 3/4 soon if the trend is continuing, and applicants just indicates a dramatic loss in people wanting to do the job. I don't know what could account for that. I'm trying to think of some big episode or something. So I don't know. I think we mentioned that last time. So yes, we've truncated that chart, but for those watching at home, if you're concerned looking at the 1/3 loss since 2022 of applicants tested, and I assume you can't be tested unless you actually expressed an interest in the first place. You don't go grab people off the street and make them take the test. Well, it's actually way worse than this chart shows. And it's a continuing trend that seems like it's getting worse. Yes, we're getting more applicants out of a smaller number of people, but how long is that sustainable? Again, I hope somebody in the department's looking at that. At some point, the rubber's going to hit the road. You're not going to have enough people to fill the spots. I couldn't even speculate why that would be, but it is maybe next time bring back the 10-year chart if we really want to scare the 3 people who are probably watching this at home. So, thank you.
Could I ask for something else? When you come back with that information, I'd also like to know, though, our retention rates relative to those we're hiring. That is also important. And I got to spend a couple of hours this week at the member services and learning about the member services program, which I think also will provide information. I know that y'all are in the data gathering, but when it is the appropriate time, Chair, that is a very enlightening thing to hear about relative to our fire department and what member services is trying to do to ensure our fire men and women are both physically and mentally healthy and are fit to do the job, but also to live successful lives and be there for their families. And so, again, not a firefighter, but I remember the days, and my dad's been retired for about 16 years now. A lot has changed in the city of Phoenix, and being a firefighter has changed substantially. And so they have choices about what city to work in. And I know Phoenix Fire Department is the best, but I also know they are working hard every day. And that's not to say our neighboring communities aren't working hard, but we have a lot of people and a lot going on in this city. And so there is a lot to the numbers that you just showed us compared to the numbers 10 years ago, and what work we have ahead of us to ensure that we're taking care of our residents, our businesses, but our men and women who serve on the fire department as well. Thank you, Chair.
Chief Kreis, Chief Bigler. Oh, did you have a question, Chief Bigler? I'm sorry.
Yes, if I may. So Chairman Robinson and members of the subcommittee, just to address some of those concerns, Councilman Waring, you're absolutely right. We definitely track and we trend. It's a conversation that frequently happens when we talk about the way it used to be, looking at a lot of the numbers now. We are looking at hybrid testing, online testing, making information, putting out information at a very rapid rate because we know that people have choices as to where they want to work. As we have our next written test on January 7th, it's an in-person test, but we're doing things like this is the PFD experience, where it gives schools an opportunity to take a field trip and really see what the profession has to offer. We know that children have choices. They're making career choices as early as a junior in high school. So we are definitely looking all of that. And then ASU did a study on public safety and the interest in public safety, which really looks at what do these generations that we're hiring, what do they want and what do they care about? So we're tracking that as well.
Thank you very much. Chief Kreis, Chief Bigler, thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Thank you. We'll now welcome Assistant Chief Mark Gonzalez to the table for item number 4. And Assistant Chief Gonzalez will provide an update on the Phoenix Fire Department's Training Academy. Welcome, Chief Gonzalez.
Good morning, Chairman Robinson, members of the subcommittee. My name is Mark Gonzalez. I'm an assistant chief who has the pleasure of overseeing our South operations and training divisions. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a brief overview and understanding of the Phoenix Fire Training Academy located off of 2425 West Lower Buckeye. I aim to do a similar presentation as Commander Garza did for you last month to keep it similar in content. This 60-acre facility was opened in September of 2010 and continues to be a state-of-the-art training facility for firefighters all around the region. I'm the recipient of the great work that you just heard from Deputy Chief Bigler and Assistant Chief Kreis from their HR recruiting efforts. I get to take them and then train them. So here's an overview of the presentation. We'll get into, we are one of 5 regional training academies. And what that means is because of the automatic aid system that you all spoke about, we train using the same core curriculum as our regional partners. When a member of our community calls 911 for a fire or medical or any other type of emergency, they get the closest unit available regardless of city boundaries. Because of this strength, we must be consistent in our operations, and this is why we train as one large department. Second to only the FDNY in our ability to respond. Phoenix, Glendale, Mesa, Chandler, and Tempe make up the 5 regional academies, with Scottsdale opening them up one very soon to make it 6. For the past few years, we have been graduating 3 classes per year. Each class takes about 16 weeks. So there's not much rest time in between classes for the dedicated staff. We currently utilize about 50 of the 60 acres. We have multiple fire buildings, including a burn tower, multiple classrooms, a driver training track, and our command training center for our recruits and the rest of the department. The ideal class size is about 45, and this is measured by physical space in the locker rooms, the number of evolutions each recruit receives, and the demand for additional members coming out of the field to become training instructors. For the past few years, we have been graduating about 55 members per class as we allow for 10 recruits from outside cities to join our regional classes. Each recruit will graduate with an Arizona State Firefighter 1 and 2 certification in this process. For the pre-academy, the Phoenix Fire Department, as you heard, prides itself on a culture of customer service excellence, safety, professionalism, and diversity to meet the needs of our community. The pre-academy is where we pick up from the great work that you just heard from Chief Christ and Chief Bigler and try to ingrain it into our employees. We review city and fire policy and our professional standards guides so our members know exactly what is expected of them from the start and throughout their careers. We stress physical fitness and total wellness that will help our recruits successfully graduate a 16-week-long academy. Resiliency being one big skill our members need to be successful. The recruits will have long days and need to study when they're home. So how they bounce back from these days will establish the good habits they will learn to help them manage a career of tough days. Specialized equipment and power tools are something our firefighters are very familiar with. We make sure to introduce our newest members to the power and capabilities of these life-saving tools so they can get used to them and start to practice with them on day one of the academy. With Career Path here, we take advantage of the opportunity of their interest. We show them the different paths a firefighter can take during a career, so they are looking for what works best for their interest on day one. As I mentioned earlier, we are one of 5 regional training academies in the Valley. As a region, we have agreed upon a core curriculum of 560 hours. Other academies may have additional hours, but they are not required. As an example to that, Phoenix has elected to add hours to teach our recruits about their mental health, cancer awareness, and additional fire department culture we feel will help them integrate as they transition into full-time firefighters. Health, wellness, and safety is presented here because it is the core of each lesson plan. Our recruits will learn 7 core fireground skills that will help them become successful teammates who can operate on any fire incident in any city around the Valley. Didactic teaching is paramount in the hazard zone. We start by teaching our recruits in the classroom. We then move out to the training props, or the grinder as we call it, to teach them with their gear and how to use the tools. And once they're successful in that environment, we train them in live fires with strict oversight of the National Fire Protection Association, the NFPA, standards that govern safety protocols for live fire training. With health and wellness in mind, we know our members are our most valued resource, and this is why we stress physical and mental wellness right away. Peer support, as Councilmember O'Brien mentioned, is a proven program that helps firefighters manage personal crisis. This program is delivered through the International Association of Firefighters across the country and in Canada as the best practice to manage crisis in the fire service. This is critical as our recruits will see traumatic incidents most members of the public will not, on top of the stressors of everyday life. Members learn the resources available and how to access them when needed. Injury prevention for a 16-week academy can be tough. Most injuries start small and get worse as the days go on. We teach prevention and early identification of injuries using our peer fitness instructors who are at each of their workouts, and our healthcare professionals at the health center to keep our members healthy and resilient physically. Cancer prevention is a practice our recruits must develop early and continue to use throughout their careers. Through the Phoenix Fire Department's labor management process, we have identified best practices for cancer prevention. One of those actions is shown on this slide. A simple rinse with soap and water after an exposure removes dangerous carcinogens and toxic substances by an average of 85%. In addition, we have hood replacements, the Nomex hoods we wear, we wash them. We wash our turnouts after each exposure. get them to shower within the hour, and continue to use our hot, warm, cold zone station design in our newest stations like Station 62. As I mentioned earlier, our recruits must be able to operate on any fire ground incident in any city. Listed here are the core functions they will be proficient in and be able to perform the day they come out of the academy. We train our recruits in technique and muscle memory with a lot of evolutions. And once we achieve success in those evolutions, we transition from operating on open concrete with empty buildings to adding everyday obstacles, distractions, and other tactical priorities to challenge their critical thinking skills. We are training professional problem solvers who need to think on their feet with the safety of our community and our firefighters as their top priority. For live fire training, we adhere strictly to the NFPA standards, the Phoenix Fire Department cancer prevention practices, and our own safety policies. The training ground can be just as dangerous as the fire ground. We take these training sessions very seriously. We use the flashover chamber to make our recruits aware of the signs and smoke and fire behavior to take quick action to exit or prevent a flashover from happening. An introduction of the heat produced in fires and an understanding of fire dynamics and fire behavior is critical for firefighters to make rescues and to prevent injuries to our citizens and themselves. Our firefighters must trust their equipment and be comfortable working in them. The Class A burn building is for live fire training with ordinary combustibles. We minimize the use of household items because they cause the greatest exposures to dangerous carcinogens and toxic substances. We use unfinished wood products and hay to provide the heat and smoke needed for the training. The Class B burn building uses propane to further minimize toxic exposures while giving the same feel and challenges of live firefighting. Car fires, dumpster fires, debris fires, they're also taught with safety in mind using our tools. Wildland and urban interface firefighting is necessary as the city of Phoenix continues to grow. We also work closely with our state resources to assist with their expertise and equipment when it comes to wildland and urban interface firefighting. And finally, with extinguishers, yes, they even work better with a little bit of technique. Because we require all of our applicants to have an EMT certification as a minimum, we spend time recertifying both EMTs and paramedics while they're in the academy to keep them on a manageable cycle for recertification for their careers. Every member on a crew must know their role in a violent incident. We have the luxury here for our recruits as they'll work with seasoned veterans who are trained in de-escalation and violent incident management, training our recruits to identify the signs of an incident turning violent, and reporting up is the goal with this training. And then the International Association of Firefighting also puts a 40-hour hazardous materials first responder class together. It's required for the firefighter 1 and 2 certification. Driver safety and vehicle familiarization is another important lesson for our recruits. Each recruit has to know where every tool and piece of equipment is on those large trucks. They also have to be another set of eyes while driving and speak up if they see something that the others don't. We continue to teach on city and fire policies and the Phoenix Fire Department's professional standards guides. And the firefighter 1 and 2 certifications come from the state, and each recruit must pass the written and practical skills that apply to those certifications. The Phoenix Fire Department stresses the need of our families, friends, and community to be successful as a fire department. We start the academy with an orientation for our recruits and their families so they can see where their recruits will be working and to hear what they can do to help their recruits be successful. As I mentioned, the large piece of apparatus and being a second set of eyes for safety, the recruits and all of our firefighters play a role in driver safety. especially if we are backing up those large vehicles. Phase 1 driver training teaches our recruits their role in backing and the hand signals to communicate to the engineer or operator of the truck. Our recruits spend a day with their crews that they'll soon be joining, and they run calls for 12-hour shifts with their instructors to help integrate them into their new work assignment. Again, we end it with family. We invite family back to see what their recruits have learned for the past few months. This is a fun time to allow our recruit training officers to chat with the families, share fun experiences with the recruits, while watching their recruits perform live training to show off their newly learned skills. Our fire chief also has an opportunity to visit with the recruits, little face-to-face time, provide expectations, and answer any questions. And then finally, we graduate the recruits from the academy. It's a fun celebration where we celebrate our recruits' successes and where we swear them in to a life of public safety service. We invite all of our elected officials, so if you have the opportunity, we'd appreciate you joining us for our next graduation or any graduation here in the future. Our training with recruits doesn't stop at the graduation. We will continue to train them for 9 more months, rotating them through 3 different stations. This on-the-job training allows them to integrate with 3 different crews while continuing training in preparation of their final evaluations. Our recruits will come back to the academy to complete Phase 2 and Phase 3 of driver training. Defensive driving and operating a rescue safely are the topics of those blocks. After several months in the field and trying to help them understand their opportunities, we revisit their career path goals to make sure they're on the right path that works for them. Fit for duty, as mentioned by Councilwoman O'Brien, is intended for our recruits to discover the resources available to successfully navigate a career with the Phoenix Fire Department. Peer support, peer fitness, cancer screening, annual physicals are a few of those resources that we visit. And finally, for final evaluations, each recruit must prove their proficiency in the core 7 skills, and then when successful, they will pass probation and join the ranks of a City of Phoenix firefighter. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and formally invite each of you to the Phoenix Fire Training Academy for a visit or a tour. Maybe put on some turnouts for you or your staff. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Chief Gonzalez? Chief, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Now, items 5 and 6 are information only. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments on either item? Seeing none, okay. And the last item today is a call.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe we have a speaker for items 5 and 6.
Oh. I thought you'd already spoken. You're absolutely correct. Thank you, Lori. Eric, you're down in the lower chambers. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yes, I can.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I came today to speak about the police hiring practices, and something I've noticed is that we don't usually think of the everyone wants to complain, like, how come we can't train our officers better? How come they don't get more training? And whatever excuse is given, the time, whatever, what it comes down to is money. It costs money to train these people. It costs money to get them where they need to be. And the mistake we make is we usually think of the police department as something that gets their money from the city, when I think the police department is able to earn that money themselves. Specifically, we protect VIPs during Super Bowls and stuff, and we pay for that. However, the city of Phoenix has plenty of CEOs and other VIPs who I'm sure would be more than happy to take some money out of their billion-dollar portfolio to get daily protection from a certified City of Phoenix police officer, and we could earmark that money for training. And then the one other thing I'd like to add before we all get out of here is I'm shocked to hear District 2 say they're for equity and response times. I couldn't agree more. For example, I was attacked at knife point at a gym on 19th Ave and Camelback, and it took the police car 22 minutes and 35 seconds to respond to that. And I couldn't thank them enough because that was about 2.5 minutes earlier than the expected response time in that area. Now, something not even serious at all happened at a different gym at Paradise Village Parkway North in Tatum, and there were 2 police cars and a supervisor there in under 8 minutes. So I think silence is betrayal, and when you have somebody waiting for something like that, you're betraying that citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's the only registered speaker. That's the only one.
Mr. Nielsen actually signed up to
Twice.
speak for both items 5 and 6. So I'm not sure if he has additional comments for item 6.
I'll exercise the chair's prerogative. I believe that was it. Okay. Are there any requests from my colleagues for any future agenda items? I believe several items have been requested by both Councilwoman O'Brien and Councilman Waring, so we have that. Is there anything else? Okay. That being the case, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
Partnerships with local organizations to distribute water and supplies to those in need. I am very proud to report that these efforts have made a significant impact. By proactively addressing the needs of our community, we have seen a notable decrease in heat-related emergency incidents. And